Wiring a Brewster. How I went about it is I've wired quite a few houses, and I've been wiring with my dad since I was 18. He was always a big fan of anything electrical. He probably should have been an electrical engineer, but he was from Montana at a time where, I don't know, that probably wasn't very likely. So instead he went into mechanics, but that was still always the side he was really passionate about. So I kind of became passionate. I'm kind of an IT geek from the 90s, so some of the social media stuff is passing me by, but anything electronic, smart home, stuff like that. So I've been around a lot of it. It's not really that hard for me to figure out what I want to do. I understand what power we need for Brewster, from the espresso machines to the grinders to the coolers, and I have a really good understanding of what circuits I want to keep separate. For example, coolers, you don't want the breaker blowing on your coolers because you fire up your coffee grinder. So we pay a lot of attention to how many amps are required for each circuit. I keep things separated that we want to make sure to never blow, and things like that. So you got to put a good plan together, and a lot of it just comes from experience. Once we knew where we wanted everything and what was required, we just went to work. And what I do is I'd lay out the electrical boxes. And sometimes in a house or whatever, we'll do that with different colors of spray paint. Switches will be one color, outlets will be another. Then I might come up with a marker and draw a circle and put a number on it. So there's 4 switches here, there's 3 switches here, 2 outlets here. You work that out with the homeowner, whoever you're dealing with. In this case, it was pretty much Mandy, so I knew what we needed everywhere. Then I just told them what size boxes to put in. Once your boxes are put in, you start running the wires from box to box and then back to the breaker box. This is where usually, and I've done this, a lot of the houses that I've done, I've managed more than I've done. So I usually take the more complicated things like wiring the breaker box, figuring out what goes where, and then keeping everybody on track. So I manage it the exact same way that I managed my crew on Brewster.
So when we were wiring Brewster, my job was mainly just putting in the boxes for the lights. So I had, I think, 12 that I put in. That was mainly what I was doing.
I popped back there briefly for a little bit. Don't even remember why, but I needed to talk to Dad about something and kind of walked into a firing storm. My dad was getting on to Stephanie pretty good because she was struggle busting. She's not used to that type of work. She's used to just being like, hey, run this here, hey, do this here. But instead, he kind of let her lead the crew. And so you can kind of see how that played out for him.
Stephanie's not usually on that crew. Specifically told you that I wanted my cooler circuits all in one circuit.
I don't know what
I said that many times. And then I told you that's this one, and this one. So you're gonna have to use this somewhere else.
Stephanie completely bombed at her part of the job.
Steffi, you're making him cry. Good. It's not fun.
It's Steffi. She can be drama sometimes, but honestly, we all can.
And in this case, Stephanie was my crew. So it helps a lot when the person you have doing it is willing to listen to you for more than 3.76 seconds at a time.
I don't do electrical work.
It's messy. You don't have to, just
Why
listen to
that?
me.
It all has to come out.
And isn't interrupting every 4.2 seconds by telling you she doesn't want to know what you're telling her, that she just wants you to somehow transplant this into her head. Cooler.
I don't care. It's a cooler.
Cooler. Cooler. 3 coolers. Bang, 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 breaker box. She's old enough that I should be able to say, hey, this is important. Run this wire to these 3 different locations, and then I'll come back and I'll go over it with you. And then it was a mess. I mean, I guess the thing that you need to understand more than anything is that at the end of all of this, which by the way, I was very patient through the whole thing, me being me, but she didn't get anything done.
I don't know, that kind of wiring is completely different than any wiring I've done. And so it kept messing with my head. And so I was just a little annoyed with it because it was a lot of work.
Oh my gosh.
You got me all confused now.
No, you're not listening to the words.
Oh my gosh.
It doesn't matter what point you prove with Stephanie. It doesn't matter. I don't know. I think I think she's really smart, and she punishes me so that I don't call her back. I think that might be part of it. She's like, I'm gonna show him just how bad it can be so that he doesn't ask me to come wire ever again. She ran one circuit, and she may be part of another one. It was a very unproductive day. She worked on that all day long, and what she got done, I could have done myself in 30 minutes. Now, she'd say prove it, but as you've already seen, that doesn't mean anything to Stephanie because I'll prove it and then she'll still just act like somehow or another I cheated. So
he was clearly right, but that's what I'm gonna say. I was clearly in the wrong once he finally went through, and I was doing it very wrong, so I was not in the right.
I'm gonna have Nico time me. If I can't have that wire out of there in 30 seconds, I'll give you $100. If I do, you give me 100.
Okay, timer.
30 seconds. You're gonna bet me $100 that I can't remove this wire in 30 seconds.
You pay me $100.
No, this is a two-way deal.
You don't get a cut, nothing.
What?
You don't get a cut anything.
Stephanie,
What?
you're making a big stinking deal about this. Look, if it ends up taking me 45 seconds, what? Yeah, my point is still the same. I don't know that it was, but if it was, it wasn't much. Not a big deal. Oh my God. What is this wire doing here?
There's the box. Where the heck do you want it?
I will be completely shocked if she walks up and gives him $100. She might. I think the only reason she'll give him the $100 is because of peer pressure from us saying no.
And I've told her many times she owes Dad $100, but she says no. She'll say she didn't make the deal. Oh no, she's definitely not. Not happening.
We weren't that serious about it, so there's other times when we're more serious about them and that we would be very like on the dot, but that I wasn't very serious about. I was in the right mindset. So unless he really feels he wants it, then he has to come and beg me for it, but I don't plan on paying him.
The $100, I mean, we didn't shake on it or anything, and she said she didn't have $100. But if I hadn't got it in 30 seconds, Stephanie would have made me pay her the $100. I think she pretty much said that. She's like, I don't have $100, but you can pay me the $100. Yeah, that's life with Shane working with his children. They're not nice people.
I'm not paying him because he got to tear my wires out, but something that took me probably 45 minutes took him less than 30 seconds, so yeah, I'm not paying him for that.
A couple days later, me and Cassie went out there and wired Brewster. So don't for a second think that just because the video primarily focuses on Stephanie's fiasco that Stephanie actually wired it. Especially anybody working in Brewster, don't worry about it. It wasn't Stephanie, I did it, it will not burn down. Still got some of the bigger stuff coming up. You know, we have to get power to the breaker box and all that, as I've mentioned already. But as far as the plan and what we got done, where we're at, that's where we're at with the electrical.
So the Canopy, again, was Dad's brainchild.
The Canopy, I don't think we can do justice to that project on video, to be honest with you. It's one of the hardest things I've done without any form of actual formal plan. I keep saying Brewster 1 is a prototype, and that's true. There's things that I will definitely change the next go around. I'd say by the third one, we should be to almost a kit build to where I can just say, okay, cut this, cut that, cut this, cut that, and everything will just go together as normal. Canopy came about for two reasons. Number one, we want to shelter the customers at the pickup window from rain and whatnot. Another reason, it's not a trailer. It's going to look like a building. The Canopy, I think, I keep saying I think because we ain't going to know until we put it up there and can see it, and I can't do that until I get it out of the building, and I can't do that until I get it on a trailer. So we're really close to all this. I automated it, went back and forth on this many times because sometimes I carry things farther than I need to. In this case, I tried talking myself out of automating it, but everything I came up with would have somebody climbing up on the roof every day if we moved it and things like that, and I just didn't like the idea of that. both from a safety perspective. If you have somebody climbing up on the roof every single day, there's a chance that one of those days something's gonna go wrong and somebody could get hurt. The other perspective is simply, it takes a lot of time, and then the other perspective would be that I'm worried about them damaging the roof. I don't want them poking a hole in anything up there and having a leak, and then we gotta deal with that. So this way, once we're done, the roof's all left alone. The automated portion of it, believe it or not, was really not that hard. It was basically just putting an actuator on there and having it screw in and out, and it really wasn't that hard. The difficult part was developing the slide.
And we're, I think, on plan, I don't even know what, plan D, plan E.
I went from rollers that are used on a barn door to building my own slides out of angle iron with rollers and I landed on these, I guess you call them linear bars, which have some rollers on them, and they work really, really good. That was the first hurdle to get over. Once I decided how I was gonna do it, I was still nervous about how well it would work. And as we went, you notice in some of the videos me scratching my head or beating it against the wall. That's because I missed something. The hard part was where these two things slide together. You know, if they'd all stopped right here, real easy. You can just make everything, it all goes here. But these had to actually go like this. And every time I would do something to one, it was interacting with the other. So I had to keep altering the build so that the two could slide in far enough that they weren't hanging out the side of the trailer. Definitely was the hardest part of the build. So we worked through those as they came up.
We did fab work as we were going for the canopy because we were worried about running into problems. So we were just cutting the pieces as we went, and that's pretty much how my job was during that.
Can I switch jobs?
What?
Can I switch jobs?
Kendra can hold it for a while if you need help. Seriously, that's that hard?
I don't want to hold it.
I don't know, probably felt she needed to go file a nail or something.
That sounds like Rachel.
My theory is that she was annoyed with the sparks hitting her and stuff from what he was cutting.
She didn't like getting
Okay,
stuff shot at her.
tighten this up, snug it up, and then, well, this stuff was shooting in you? She didn't say that, she said that's not it.
Rachel said she wants a different job because she seen me and Cassie standing there getting Dad stuff when he wanted it. She didn't want to just stand there and hold it. She's just like, I want to be doing what they're doing, so can I switch jobs?
I don't really know. It was definitely odd the way the whole thing went down, and she just kind of brushed herself off and went and stood over there and smiled. So, and I don't want Rachel to have to, I don't know, strain her arm muscles. She's gonna have to explain exactly what was so hard about holding that.
It was getting heavy. I didn't want to hold it because it was getting heavy. And it was just kind of annoying holding your arm up there for like, I don't know how long it was. I'd say a time, but then you'll just prove me wrong with your video footage. But yeah, so I had Kendra do it.
I don't know why my girls do a lot of things that they do, I gotta be honest with you.
I think it's very cool. Like, I've not seen anything like that. I didn't know what to think when he was telling me about it or what it was gonna look like, but I think it turned out very cool and it's very unique how it works and it's functioning. So it's one of a kind, definitely.
I think the canopy actually turned out really well. I think it will look good and it's gonna be super functional. It'll be nice, you just have a little knob you turn and it'll just kind of draw out and then draw back in. No, I think overall it looks really good and I think it will do its job. So I think it turned out pretty good.
But from where I was out there, it looked like it was cool and it looks like, my dad's pretty smart, so I think he can do it. He's got this. He figures a lot of stuff out that I would never be able to figure out. He comes up with a lot of cool ideas, honestly.
So the plan for the canopy, I think, is going really well. It's gonna function really well. It's gonna do what we need it to do in the fact that we'll be able to retract it when we need to move it. It'll look really cool when we put it out. I'm very proud of Dad for coming up with the whole thing, but I knew he could do it.
It's strong and it'll work, and that's the important thing. I think it looks really good, and I think once it's painted and it's up there, the looks are really gonna come in. As far as the functionality of the canopy, I'm really happy with it. It functions exactly like I hoped it would, and there's no glitches. So it doesn't get hung up as it rolls out. It doesn't feel like the drawers, I'm calling them the drawers, they're the actual canopy. But the reason I do that is because it's kind of like a drawer in a cabinet. That's the premise behind how I built it. And it slides on the slides good. It hangs out there, literally just hangs on those slides. I don't see any give. Everything seems rigid and really structurally sound. So I'm really happy with the functionality of the canopy. and looking forward to seeing it work on the actual Brewster.
As far as Shane building the canopy and the way it functions and the way it goes together, I think is a really good design. I think it's going to look really good. I mean, obviously right now it's all raw aluminum, so you can kind of see the mess and the welds and everything. But once it's primed and painted, which is what I'll be doing next week, once it's all put together and you've got the aluminum grate going around the sides of it to finish the look and the trim of it, I think it's going to look exceptional.
We got it ready to go on. It's all working. That portion of it is 12 volt. We'll be wiring that later on once it's actually on the trailer. Like I said, I can't set it on there. It's just don't have room in the room that I'm building it in, but it's ready to go. The roofing project, the last 2 weeks have been pretty tough on me because building the canopy, never done that before. Building the racks going around the outer edges up there, never done that before. On the roof itself, I bounced around that a little bit. I have had some experience with the liquid roof, and to be honest with you, I've never had a failure. Thought about going that route with this, but I decided to go with a flat roof look. I mean, you see a lot of these things on trailers and they have these roofs on them. Teeny little buildings with a pitched roof. I mean, it might look quaint, but honestly, I think it looks kind of dorky. I wanted this to look like a modern commercial building that we dropped in a parking lot for a drive-through coffee shop. So to do that, I had to have the walls go up higher than the roof, basically creating a little dish up there for all the water to come in. For those of you that understand how roofs work, that's not the best case scenario for water. You want the water to shed and go off.
So we had to get like a tapered board that we could put below the seal because, again, flat roof, water needs to roll off in a certain direction. So Dad did a lot of research into the installation of it and what we needed, and then it was my job to contact the different companies and make sure we got what we needed.
I had Josh and Mike show up. He had taken a few days off. It was right around New Year's there, and just showed up and seen what we were doing, asked if he could give a hand. I'm really glad he did. They're both very handy, and it allowed me to let Quentin stay on the painting of the racks that we're putting around it. So first thing we did is I had Josh, who's handy with a tape measure and a saw. I had him cut my panels.
I was pretty much helping my Uncle Josh out because my dad was up on the roof with my sisters, and I was down there, so I figured I'd go help him because everyone else was with Dad. So we were cutting out some stuff for Dad.
We did that. It went together like a puzzle, and it was perfect. I mean, it's just a perfect grade from front to back. Then we had to fasten those down with the fasteners. They come with their big washers and a screw that goes down into the plywood and holds those down.
On that day, we were putting the roof together and the layer on there. I was kind of just a background person, but that's because Josh and Mike actually showed up and did a lot of the work for us. So me and Cassie kind of just watched, and then whenever they needed our help, we went up there.
And then we went with TPO. There's numerous coatings like this. The TPO is the big tarp thing that we laid out over it. The research that I did, I felt most comfortable that the TPO would be the way to go. I'm not gonna really dig into that because I'm not an expert. This was just a non-expert doing what a lot of people do, going online, figuring it out and deciding on a product. So we got the roll down, pretty heavy stuff. But if we think we got it square, going it up. Whoa. What is that about?
You're about knocking out the dang trailer.
This particular TPO, you can get it with adhesive on it, or you can put the adhesive down first. This is already on there. So it's like the second it touches, it wants to stick and grab.
And it's just like a big sheet of rubber, and it's sticky. So you can't let it stick to itself. It's almost like installing vinyl, but just on a very much larger scale. So like you said, I wasn't there for it, but I imagine it was a little tricky for them to do that as well. But from the research we did, it should be a really good product.
Plan A, again, never done this before, was to peel the adhesive, expose the adhesive on the whole width of it, put it down at one end and kind of work our way back. It did not work at all. It was a bit of a disaster in the making. We felt that right out the gate. Everybody stayed calm. That was important, which is easy to do when you're working with Josh. He's just he's the best of us. There's no question about it. Just a good guy. You know, keep that away. And then we need to get...
Well, then hold it there, Michael. Wait, no. That's your one job, was to hold the darn thing.
I finally found some. You guys have fun. Josh is the nice brother. I've always been told. All right, where's the white plastic things, Kendra?
My favorite part about working with Josh and Mike is that they're both really funny, so they kind of just make the day, I don't know, brighter? I don't know.
Off the wall. Well, they're just making it look hard. Just slow, steady pressure.
There we go.
They also do a lot, and they help so we don't have to do as much. So that's what I like working with them.
I mean, he's fun to work with, funny, loving, I mean, all the stuff.
That day was actually pretty easygoing for me since Josh showed up. He did a lot of the stuff that would have had me having to go up and down the ladder and Dad having a bad mood for most of the day instead. So I pretty much just stood around, did what I was told every once in a while.
All right, look. We gotta talk about this because she just revealed something, right? If I'd have had to work with Cassie, I would have gotten a bad mood. But I got to work with somebody who actually helped and thought with his brain and tried to actually help me do something, and I didn't get in a bad mood. So I just want to kind of put your pieces together. I'm saying the same thing you are. Since you're going to accuse me of that, I would have gotten a bad mood. It would have happened.
I wasn't accusing you. I was being honest.
Well, I am too.
I'm not as skilled as Josh, so
I don't think it's skill so much as given to farts about something. And Josh was like, hey, we got to put this down. We should try this. Hey, I want to help. Can I hold it this way? Where you would just stand back and say, hey, Dad, it sucks being you, doesn't it? And then I'll say, do something, say, hey, Dad, it really, really sucks being you, doesn't it? And you'll do that until I tell you, yeah, it really sucks being me. So I just want to clarify that statement.
Sounds like it actually went pretty well thanks to Josh and Mike coming to help him out on it.
So what we did is we just kind of backed it up and went with, I think, which was his plan, which made sense. The adhesive backing that they put on this has a seam right down the middle of it, so you can peel half of it off.
Yeah, because then we can put this over here, it'll loose, and then we can get on there and nail with that, and then we'll just slowly walk back and forth. We just kind of run it that way.
What we need to be able to fold this, and we can't do that until we roll it all the way out.
Yeah, we're gonna roll it now.
So
you want to roll all the way up now and start peeling that end back.
No, I want to fold it like this.
not until after we unroll it.
After we unroll it.
So we'll pick one side up.
And then we're gonna peel one side off.
You feel we're pretty square? You feel we're pretty square though, Mike? Because once we do this, that's...
Instead of us working from one end and putting the whole thing down, we could work one side down and then fold the other side back down and work it. So took a little bit of doing, but we undid what we did, folded it over, peeled one side off, and then went back with it that way. And like I say, I'm not gonna say it went super smooth, but the result was really good. The next one we do, we'll look a whole lot more intelligent. So we got that rolled down. Then you have to make sure that you get your edges really tight where it folds. And what we did there is I just had them hold the side away, and then I went down there with a little piece of plastic that we had, and I kind of jammed it in right on that corner to get it as tight as I could. Pretty happy with how that worked. Could it be tighter? Probably, but I don't know how. I just don't know what you're gonna get to bend that at a sharper angle than what it did, but I'm happy with how that worked. Then the next step was to come back and stick the sides up to the walls going around on the two sides. Same thing, I got better at that as we went along. The first one had some bubbles in it. By the time I got about 20% done with the second side, I'd figured out a way to do it pretty much wrinkle and bubble free and pretty fast. It was a bit of a process, but it worked out well. So that left me with my two ends now exposed for leaks and nowhere for my water to go. So the next step was to cut the holes out for the scuppers. For those of you who don't know what a scupper is, it's basically a square that goes out the wall of a flat roof like this and allows the water to exit, and that seals down onto your roof. So I had to cut the holes where I wanted them. Again, I don't have a lot of room to work with down there. I could have put them closer to the corners, but then I would have been fighting the corner and the scupper to get it sealed, and I really didn't want to do that. But we put those in, and there was logic behind the reason I put them where I put them. Customer first, we wanted to make sure that the water was dealt with in a way that the customers are experiencing the least of it. That includes the canopies, as I've mentioned in other videos. We've actually built them to where they drain back into the roof. Then the water goes on the roof and it runs down and runs out the scuppers. Then we went in and put the flashing on. What the flashing did is pretty much on the ends the same thing that we did on the sides. So we came in 6 inches on the bottom, and we take a 12-inch wide strip, glue it down 6 inches in on top of the roof, and then you fold it and you go up the wall on the ends, and that seals those ends, which leaves the corners with a cut right down them. That's the part that I don't like about this method. What we did is we found some corners that you could heat weld right to the TPO in each one of those corners, and then I'm sealing them really good with a liquid roof on top of that. So I'm 100% certain this roof's not gonna leak and it's gonna hold up. I added an additional strip to my flashing, so I'm gonna try and draw this with my fingers. So you got your wall 6 inches down and 6 inches out down to the floor. Then I put another piece of 12 inch 6 inches further out that overlap that. So the water's gonna have to get underneath 2 of those seams to get underneath and through there. It ain't gonna happen. And then on top of that, I sealed those seams with the liquid roof. I'm really confident that the roof's gonna hold up. Cassie burned my finger putting the corners in, but it really hurts. My kids are mean to me, so don't feel sorry for my kids. If they're getting yelled at, it's just because they deserve it, and I hold them to a standard, which more people would do. I think we'd be a better place, and they get me back. I mean, she burned me.